The house had always been there, standing stoically at the end of a winding gravel path, its walls weathered by time and its windows staring blankly into the dense woods surrounding it. It was a relic left to me by a distant relative, one I barely remembered from my childhood. I'm a solitary figure with a penchant for the forgotten and the arcane. Books were my refuge, and it was perhaps fitting that I inherited this house, with its grand library, that seemed to echo the tales of a bygone era. I remember the day I moved in. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood and dust, the kind of smell that settles deep into the fabric of a place, marking it with the passage of time. The house was furnished with antiques, each piece whispering secrets of its past. But it was the bookshelf in the study that captured my attention, the most towering edifice of dark wood, filled with books of every size and color. The books were a patchwork of history, from weathered tomes with cracked spines to more recent, yet still aged, hardcovers. Settling into the house was like stepping into another world, one where the modern bustle seemed distant, almost irrelevant. The first few nights were uneventful, filled with the mundane tasks of arranging my belongings and exploring the nooks and crannies of my new abode. However, it was on the fourth night that I noticed something peculiar. Some of the books on the grand shelf seemed to have shifted slightly from their original positions. I assumed it was the result of my earlier explorations, perhaps a careless brush of my hand as I perused their titles. I meticulously rearranged them, aligning their spines with the precision of a seasoned librarian. That night, as I lay in bed, the house groaned and whispered around me, as if the walls themselves were conversing in hushed tones. I attributed it to the settling of an old structure, my mind rationalizing the eerie course. Sleep eventually claimed me, but it was a restless slumber, filled with dreams of shadowy figures moving silently between rows of endless bookshelves. The next morning brought a chill that seemed to seep into my bones as I made my way to the study. What I saw on the bookshelf made my breath catch in my throat. The books had rearranged themselves again, but this time there was a clear message spelled out across the shelves. Help me. My initial reaction was disbelief, a skeptical laugh escaping my lips. It had to be a prank, perhaps orchestrated by local kids who'd heard stories about the haunted house in the woods. I studied the message, the letters formed by the alignment of the book spines, a deliberate act, not the random product of chance. Curiosity overcame my skepticism. Who or what was asking for help? And why through such an elaborate method? The message felt like an enigma wrapped in the walls of this ancient home, a puzzle that beckoned me with its silent, cryptic plea. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of an unraveling mystery that would lead me down a path of eerie discoveries and chilling encounters, a journey into the heart of the house's dark past. Over the next few days, the bookshelf became the focus of my world. Each morning, I found new messages. They were simple at first, like look or see. I spent hours staring at the books, trying to decipher a deeper meaning, a clue to the identity of this mysterious communicator. Then, one night, as the house creaked in the cold embrace of the wind, a more ominous message appeared. Behind you. I spun around, my heart racing, expecting to confront someone or something lurking in the shadows. But there was nothing, just the empty room bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight spilling through the window. Despite my initial fear, a part of me was fascinated. I was caught in a web of my own curiosity, unable to break free from the spell of these mysterious messages. I started researching the history of the house and its previous inhabitants. The local library became my second home, the librarians my unwitting accomplices in this quest for answers. I learned about the original owner of the house, a reclusive man named Edward Blackwood, known in the early 1900s for his eccentricities and obsession with the occult. Rumors swirled about his dealings with dark magic and forbidden rituals. It was said that he amassed a collection of rare and arcane books, some of which were believed to be cursed. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. Could one of these books be on my shelf? As my investigation deepened, so did the strangeness at home. Whispering sounds seemed to emanate from the walls, especially at night. I'd catch glimpses of shadowy figures out of the corner of my eye, only to turn and find nothing there. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. One evening, as I sat reading in the study, a cold draft swept through the room. The pages of the book I was holding fluttered as if caught in a gust of wind, yet all the windows were closed. When I looked up, my breath caught in my throat. The books on the shelf had rearranged themselves again, forming the most chilling message yet. It watches. I felt a sense of dread wash over me. The playful curiosity that had initially driven me had morphed into a deep, unsettling fear. I was no longer just a passive observer in this hunting, I was a part of it, entangled in its ghostly whispers and shadowy secrets. My sleep became plagued with nightmares, images of unseen eyes staring at me from the darkness, and the feeling of a presence hovering just out of sight. The house, with its creaking floors and whispering walls, seemed to be closing in on me. The line between reality and imagination blurred as I tried to make sense of these paranormal occurrences. Yet, deep down, I knew I couldn't ignore the messages. They were a cry for help, a plea from beyond the veil of reality. And I was the only one who could hear it. As the days passed, the messages on the shelf grew more frequent and urgent. Don't sleep, one warned. Another day, I found their lies spelled out in bold letters. Each message added a layer of anxiety and fear to my already frayed nerves. I began to feel like a prisoner in my own home, constantly looking over my shoulder, jumping at every creak and groan of the old house. In my research, I stumbled upon a diary belonging to Edward Blackwood, hidden in a concealed compartment in the study. The diary was filled with ramblings about the occult, dark rituals, and a particular book that he referred to as the key to the other side. This book, it seemed, was the centerpiece of his collection, a tome so dangerous that even he feared its power. The more I read, the more I became convinced that this book was in my house, possibly even on my very bookshelf. I scoured the shelves, looking for anything that matched the description in the diary, but to no avail. It was as if the book didn't want to be found, hiding itself from my desperate search. The paranormal activity in the house escalated alongside my growing obsession. One night, while I was poring over Blackwood's diary, the temperature in the room dropped sharply. My breath turned to mist in the air, and the feeling of being watched intensified. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow move, slinking along the wall like a dark, amorphous creature. I turned to face it, my heart pounding in my chest, but it vanished before my eyes. The books on the shelf rustled, as if disturbed by an unseen hand, and a new message appeared. Trapped here. It was then that I started to understand. The entity, whatever it was, wasn't just haunting the house, it was trapped here, bound to the bookshelf, the books, and perhaps even to the cursed home Blackwood had written about. Sleep became an elusive dream. I spent my nights listening to the whispers of the house, trying to piece together the story hidden within its walls. The ghostly apparitions grew bolder, no longer just fleeting shadows, but discernible figures, glimpses of a life that once was. One figure in particular began to stand out, a man, gaunt and pale, with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through the veil of death. I knew in my bones that this was Edward Blackwood, his spirit unrested, tethered to the mortal world by his dark obsessions. Each encounter left me more drained, my mind teetering on the edge of sanity. But I couldn't leave. I had to find the cursed book, to free both myself and the trapped soul of Blackwood from this endless haunting. The house, with its ancient secrets and whispered horrors, had become my prison, and I the unwilling warden to its spectral inhabitants. The tension in the house was palpable, like a thick fog that refused to lift. My days and nights blended into a continuous cycle of search and discovery, punctuated by the eerie manifestations of Edward Blackwood's tormented spirit. Each message on the shelf seemed to carry more weight, more urgency, as if time was running out for both of us. Then, on a night when the moon hung low and full, casting a spectral glow over the house, the climax of my haunting experience unfolded. I was in the study, the only light coming from a flickering candle, casting dancing shadows across the walls. The air was colder than usual, and I felt a presence, stronger and more oppressive than ever before. As I turned towards the bookshelf, a new message was forming before my eyes, the books moving with a life of their own. It's here. My heart raced, my breath caught in my throat. I spun around, and there he was, Edward Blackwood, more solid than any apparition I had seen before, his eyes hollow pits of despair. He spoke, his voice a hollow echo. "You must find the book, it binds me here, traps us both." His words trailed off into a whisper, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I asked him where to find the book, but he just pointed towards the bookshelf and vanished, leaving me alone in the chilling silence. I approached the shelf, my hands trembling. I pulled book after book from the shelves, searching frantically for the cursed tome. Hours passed, and just as I was about to give up, my fingers brushed against the leather spine that sent a jolt through my body. I pulled it out, and there it was, an ancient book with no title, just a strange symbol on the cover. It emanated a malevolent energy, and I knew instinctively this was the book Blackwood had spoken of. As I held it, the house groaned and shuddered around me, as if reacting to the book's presence. Whispers filled the room, voices overlapping in a cacophony of desperation and madness. The air grew denser, and I struggled to breathe. With every ounce of courage I had left, I opened the book. The pages were filled with indecipherable script and eerie illustrations that seemed to move and twist before my eyes. The room spun, and for a moment, I felt as if I was being pulled into the book itself. Suddenly, the house shook violently, as if in the throes of an earthquake. Books fell from the shelves, and the candle went out, plunging me into darkness. I clutched the cursed tome to my chest, knowing that it was the key to ending this nightmare. When the chaos subsided, I found myself on the floor, the book still in my hands. The oppressive presence of Blackwood's spirit was gone, replaced by a heavy silence. I had found the cursed book, but now I faced a new dilemma: how to rid myself and the house of its malevolent influence. The discovery of the cursed book marked a turning point in my haunting ordeal. Holding the tome, I felt an overwhelming responsibility to resolve the situation, not just for my own safety, but to release Edward Blackwood's tormented spirit from its earthly bonds. The air in the house, though still thick with the remnants of the supernatural, was no longer suffocating. It was as if by acknowledging the book's power, I had taken the first step towards breaking its hold on the house. With a newfound determination, I began researching ways to neutralize the book's curse. My days were consumed with visits to occult experts, historians, and librarians who specialized in ancient texts and supernatural lore. Each person offered a piece of the puzzle, slowly helping me construct a plan to deal with the cursed book. As I delved deeper into the occult practices, I learned about rituals that could cleanse objects of their malevolent energy. However, the more I learned, the more I realized the danger of such undertakings. The rituals were complex and fraught with risk, requiring precision and a deep understanding of the supernatural forces at play. Despite the risks, I knew I had to act. The book's presence continued to cast a shadow over the house, and I could feel the urgency in the stillness of the air, as if the house itself was waiting for me to make my move. One evening, under the light of the full moon, I prepared to conduct a cleansing ritual. I sat up in the study, the cursed book lying open in the center of a circle of salt. Candles flickered at cardinal points around the room, casting long, dancing shadows against the walls. I recited the incantations I had learned, each word resonating with power, vibrating through the air. As the ritual progressed, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The air crackled with energy, and the pages of the book began to flutter as if caught in a non-existent breeze. I continued, my voice steady despite the fear that gripped my heart. Suddenly, a gust of wind howled through the room, extinguishing the candles and plunging me into darkness. I felt a surge of energy emanating from the book, a wave of malevolent force that threatened to overwhelm me. But I held my ground, continuing the incantations with a forceful determination. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the tumultuous energy dissipated. The room fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting like a fog at sunrise. I lit a candle and saw that the cursed book was now closed, its cover no longer emanating the sinister aura it once did. The ritual was complete, but I knew my task was not yet finished. The book needed to be kept safe, away from those who might unwittingly unleash its curse again. I decided to leave the house, taking the book with me to find a suitable place for safekeeping. The drive away from the house was surreal. The events of the past weeks felt like a distant dream, yet the book lying on the passenger seat was a tangible reminder of the reality I had experienced. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a shadowy figure or a cryptic message, but there was only the road behind me, stretching away into the night. Leaving the house behind, I drove through the night, the cursed book beside me, wrapped in a cloth to obscure its malevolent aura.